What's going on, guys? It's Keith with the L1 Automotive Training Channel, and welcome to this week's Tech Question Quickies, where I answer all of your questions about automotive tools, equipment, training, and just anything industry related. So, let's check it out. Alright guys, welcome to the video. Like I said, if you have questions that you want answered, remember to send your questions to techquestions@l1training.com. I'll put a link down in the description and across the bottom of the screen here. That way you guys can remember where to go. So, let's check out our questions for this week. Our first question is from Wilkerson Auto. I know Josh pretty well. He's a great guy. Josh says, I have multiple modules with a U1041 missing or incorrect vehicle speed sensor VSS. When driving the car, it stays in first gear and never shifts. According to Identifix, the ABS distributes the vehicle speed to the cluster on the SCP network of the vehicle. My front two wheel sensors are garbage since another shop completely botched the job and the sensors will have to be replaced. I verified the rear sensors work and I verified powers and grounds to the ABS module. I know I have to replace front sensors, but would two missing signals be enough for the ABS module to not put out a VSS signal on the network? According to Identifix, if I verified powers and grounds to the ABS module and the connectors are good, the module will need to be replaced. I just want to make the right call and not underdiagnose the issue on this car. So this car is a 1998 Lincoln Continental, and there's no vehicle speed and it's stuck in first. That's the title of his email. I'm not super convinced that an ABS module would need to be replaced, but seeing this missing or incorrect VSS code, and is that code in the cluster? I believe that code's in the cluster. He didn't specify. Absolutely, just one wheel speed sensor being off can cause an issue. I have, in fact, ran into this on a Nissan, like semi-recently, on a big NV 2500 van, very similar to mine that I drive, but this was an older one, like a 13 or 14, and we had a single wheel speed sensor that the wire was just severed at the back, and it was causing a no speedometer issue. And this was a four-wheel ABS vehicle. So I am convinced that it is totally possible. Looking at service info after I had originally read this email, it's not very clear. So you would definitely have to fix the wheel speed issues first. I would definitely lean towards that's probably going to fix it, but I'm with you. It's difficult to not underdiagnose or overdiagnose the issue. The last thing we want to do is tell them we have to fix this vehicle, these speed sensors, and then that fixes it. So we probably want to be real careful with our verbiage there, Josh, and just be like, hey, service information doesn't give us all of the answers. We don't have another one of these vehicles to replicate this concern, but we would definitely need to fix the known bad speed sensors before we continue with the diagnosis of a missing speed sensor fault. So Josh, I apologize, I don't have a better answer, but I would say you have to fix those wheel speeds first, and then you can look into if there's a continuing issue. Obviously, some other stuff you could do to check ahead of time would maybe scope the SCP network and see if it looks good. If you can see other data from the ABS module in the cluster, I believe vehicle speed is the only thing that happens, though. So something like my Autel MS919 that came with a signal generator, you could probably generate something like an AC signal, and then if you could probably just take that and splice that any kind of signal generator off and send it to those to replicate some good wheel speeds and see what happens then. It's very possible that it's looking for a mismatch between front and rear and knows that if the back sensors are moving but the front ones aren't, it goes, hey, we're missing some speed sensor inputs. And I think that's what's happening. So it's going to be very difficult to replicate multiple signals. Or maybe you could, at the module, try to wire the jumper, the rears to the front, so you could replicate the same signal on all four wheels is an option. This is something that maybe you could try. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but that would be my first thing, would be figure out that wheel speed issue first on the front two and then go from there. And unfortunately, you're going to have to just kind of ultimatum that to the customer. Sorry, couldn't be more help on that one, man. That's a really odd one, the 98. When I looked up service info for this car when I first read it, there's just nothing super clear in service information leading you to that answer. So thank you for the question, though, and let us know how that goes, and we'll do a follow-up on it. All right, on to the next one, guys. So the next one, James V says, just to say hello. Well, hello, James, and I appreciate the email. Glad to see that you're hanging out with us. This one's from Mohammed B. Mohammed says, "Hi Keith, how can I buy your programming sessions? Question mark. I want to start flashing the modules in the shop instead of sending them out. I also need to know that the Surface Pro laptop is compatible with GM. I already bought a Drew Technologies pass-through. Thanks, M." Well, Mohammed, so yes, on my website, l1training.com, I do offer the option to purchase those, to purchase just the J2534 class alone at the price of $150 for access to the class, and you get to see that. Currently, it's indefinite. As long as the website exists, you will have access to that video. Or for $20 a month, you have access to all my training videos, which is about 100 hours of content. So as long as the subscription's active, you'll have access to the J2534 course and more. So that it'd be l1training.com at the website, and there'll be a link down there inside the description for that. He says, I want to start flashing modules in the shop instead of sending it out. Also need to know if the Surface Pro laptop is compatible with GM. Well, depending upon your specifications, the Surface Pro could be. I'm not sure exactly what Surface Pro model you have, but GM's current requirements are not super crazy. But if we look at them, I'll just pull it up real quick and we'll take a look. So looking at GM's specific outlines for their hardware, looks like all the enterprise-grade hardware, PCs, and access points are all supported. They say specifically consumer-grade hardware, PC access points are not supported. Apple and Mac tablets are not supported. Non-branded or built by hand or thin client PCs are not supported. So processor-wise, they want an i3, an i5, or an i7 processor that's newer than 6th gen. So how you would know the generation would basically be if it's like a i7 8700 processor, that's an 8th gen, or a 6400 series processor is a 6th gen. So it would need to be an i3, an i5, or an i7, newer than 6th gen. Windows 10 Pro 64-bit. Windows 10 Pro doesn't come in 32-bit. But no other version of Windows is currently supported. Windows 7, XP, Vista, 8, doesn't matter. None of the Android stuff's supported. You have to have a very specific version of Java that's in 32-bit, even though your processor is 64-bit. They also want, at least 8 gigabytes of RAM, at least 256 gigabytes of hard disk space. I think there's also a free space requirement. Let me look and see if they still have that on here. I'm not seeing the free space requirement currently. Unless it's in its own separate box. Then they go into some basic stuff about like network adapters, displays. They want at least a 13-inch display. Of course, you're going to have administrator passwords to get into stuff to install these. They want at least 100 megabyte per second internet speed. Yeah, they're going to want PC virus and monitoring turned off. An enterprise grade PC is not going to have that built on. So basically, they're pretty small standards, nothing crazy. Any later model laptop is going to meet those specifications. So depending upon your generation of Surface Pro, absolutely that should totally be compatible. So looks like you're well on your way. You just need a little, and again, like I've spoke about in previous videos, my training classes are not going to prepare you for every scenario, but it's definitely going to give you a ton of information in getting started in module programming and get you a lot of information about tools and equipment and limitations. So I would love to see you start doing that. If you start doing that programming and stuff and get on board with our classes, please send us an email back and let us know how it's going. Thank you for your question, Muhammad. So let's check out the next one. So the next question is from J Dub. He says, 2003 Tahoe. Hello, Keith. Son called and told me that conductor 1 error shows up on his cluster display and there's not much to go off of over the phone. I found one technician at justanswer.com website who has had a client who saw this on their dash. Tech seems to try to answer the question, but sounds he's not sure about it being a GM technician and all. Don't want to put any tech down. It seems this error is not documented in all data nor on the web unless I'm not searching hard enough. Then he provides a link to the error. Any insight will do. That's just all for now. Just starting and subscribing soon. Thanks. J-Dub, I appreciate the question. So I have ran into conductor 1 error on instrument clusters, and most of the time, well, I'm going to rephrase that. Every time I have encountered the conductor 1 error, and the car for me has been either a no start or intermittently a no start. Only when this error shows up, I usually end up having to check powers, grounds, comms to the cluster to find that the cluster itself has failed internally, and it's some kind of EEPROM or MCU error, depending upon the generation. Now, that being an '03 Tahoe, that is right about the same. I don't know if it was a '03 Tahoe, but I think it was '03 Silverado that I dealt with, so the same cluster. I attempted to repair the first one I ever dealt with, and it was just a corrupted MCU or EEPROM. I believe it was the 93 C66 EEPROM, 8-leg EEPROM that was on the board that I had to replace. I had used another '03 Silverado, '04 Silverado-ish EEPROM and copied it and then replaced onto a blank 93 C66 I had, swapped it out, then did a flash with SPS. So that's a lot of work. That's something that I wouldn't recommend to someone who doesn't do EEPROM work. Your best recommendation would be to purchase a remanufactured or a new instrument cluster. Even a used one is possible. I don't see the conductor 1 error. I've seen it maybe 5 or 6 times ever, and I've replaced hundreds of clusters. And then just reprogram it with SPS, and then you're good to go. That's really all that I've seen. I'm sure there's a possibility of a conductor 1 error happening due to something else outside of the instrument cluster, but I don't think it's possible, as it's an MCU or EEPROM error. So most likely you have a failed instrument cluster, but again, anytime you're going to call for a module, you want to check powers, grounds, and communications going to the module, and you're going to make sure you load check those powers and grounds using voltage drop method while the circuit is loaded, to ensure that you're making the right call on this one. That is a very odd one. I've only seen conductor 1, like I said, 5 or 6 times maybe ever, and each time it's been the instrument cluster itself has been failed. So that's my experience with it. Take that as you would like, but that's what I've got for you. And thank you very much for your question. Well, it looks like that's all I've got in my mailbox for this week, so I appreciate everyone sticking around for this week's Tech Question Quickies. Remember, send all your questions to TechQuestions at l1training.com right here, and we'll answer your questions like we do almost every single week. So thanks, guys. Keep them rolling in. Remember, like, subscribe, comment, thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. Either way, it's a good interaction. So let's talk to you guys later. Appreciate it. Goodbye.